Welcome back to the Argentina Project podcast in the Latin American program of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. I'm Benjamin Gadan. I'm pleased to have Alex Schober from the Frontier Strategy Group with us today. Alex is the author of a recent report on Argentina's economic recovery. We're going to look at an important element of that study, which is inflation in Argentina. This is an area that the Argentine government is least proud of, I would say, of all the areas that they have targeted for the historic reform program of President Mauricio Macri. I'll give some very quick numbers, and then we'll get to the analysis with Alex. The target for 2017 for inflation was 17%. It came in at 25%, so significantly off. The goal was then revised in late December for 2018 for this year from 12% to 15%, and expectations of Wall Street analysts and of analysts in Argentina are quite a bit higher than that. The question is, how big a concern is this? I mean, the Argentines, Alex, will say, hey, it was 40% in 2016. We're on the right track. Everyone says it's decreasing. Leave us alone. Give us a breathing room. What do you think?
It's certainly on the right track. The general trend is deceleration in Argentina. However, that being said, in the first quarter of the year, we're probably not going to see inflation decelerate as much as the government would like. So as you had mentioned, the central bank and the Ministry of Finance have slightly different goals for the year. The Ministry of Finance announced in December that their goal for the year would be 15%, which is different than the 12% goal that the central bank laid out. That said, the main driver of inflation right now is the subsidy removals. This is causing utility prices to raise significantly. Just to give you a little statistic, so December's monthly inflation was the highest of the year. It's at 3%. And this was because the utility hikes comprise of almost 18% of the entire increase.
These are for transportation and energy.
Yes.
That's right. It's interesting. I mean, you mentioned these different targets for what is typically a privilege reserved for the monetary authority. That raised some alarms in late December. You had this infamous press conference where instead of the central bank president on his own discussing a revision in targets, you had some actors from the executive branch. I think the finance minister was there and the chief of staff of the cabinet was there as well. Did that raise any concerns in terms of independence of the central bank, something Argentina has not been known for historically?
I don't think it necessarily raised a lot of concern because the central bank has, at least this central bank, has been known as having relative success in causing inflation to decelerate. I think the main problem has been that we're now at a point where the central bank is trying to battle a pro-growth agenda and an anti-inflation agenda. With the interest rates as high as they've been, and they've been as high as 25, 30%, it's now causing the peso to be severely overvalued vis-a-vis the carry trade. And we also have a problem that because of the peso so overvalued and because interest rates are so high, that's starting to lag on growth. Unfortunately, inflation has not decelerated that much, so you sort of have to choose, and you're playing on a tightrope, which route are you going to take? Are you going to try to reduce inflation as much as you can, or are you going to sacrifice low growth in order for that to happen?
Just returning to this question of the independence of the central bank, I mean, it would seem to play a role, though, in inflation expectations. And as you know, of course, in wage negotiations and various other factors, the expectations of inflation play a real role in driving inflation itself. It seems to me that losing confidence in the independence of the central bank could have a deleterious effect on the expectations element of it. Do I have that right?
Yeah, no, you're completely right. And the fact that during this time, the inflation expectations rose from about 17% to 19% by private actors. The problem that this has is that you have market actors start to question the legitimacy of the short to medium term goals of the government, potentially causing price makers to preemptively raise the price of goods. This is sort of more of like a long-term problem that we're looking at, is how inflation expectations align with the central bank and the Ministry of Finance goals.
The good news in terms of 2017 was the deficit reduction, which actually beat the target that was set out by the central government. The long-term plan for controlling inflation seems to be to reduce the deficit, reduce the need to monetize that deficit. And in that sense, they would say they're on the right track. And again, cut us some slack. Look at how far we've come.
Right, exactly. So the fiscal deficit was better than expected to end 2017. That's not even including the tax amnesty that happened during the year. So my reaction is that Argentina's government is trying to play, for the long term, you slash the fiscal deficit in order to defeat inflation, but unfortunately this causes a bit of a bumpy ride in which you have a few spikes of inflation month on month because of these utility price hikes.
Excellent. Alex, thank you so much for joining us on the Argentina Project podcast. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.